welcome to another amazing episode of The Sovereign Soul with Jacqueline Hopper. You know who I am. I think I say this every single time I have a guest on. I am so excited to introduce you to my guest, but I am really excited to introduce you to today's guest because this lovely lady has grown on me. She's grown on me. She's not going anywhere. She is, going to be in my life for the rest of my life because of all the awesomeness that she adds. She is none other than Elizabeth Lyons. You are a 5-time, or has that expanded since the last time I looked you up and stalked you? 5-time bestseller?
It's still 5. I'm working on 6, but it's not out yet.
So working on 6, but she is a 5-time best-selling author. She is the glue and the sweat, the tears, the blood, the everything that's behind most authors, whether she's creating it or having it happen, behind most authors, ability to really put out quality, amazing stories and bodies of work. And I've been blessed to be able to work with her for my books, Becoming, A Journey to Discovering Inner Peace, which you can all find out on Amazon or jacquelinehopper.com, as well as the book that is in the works right now, which we are affectionately calling Awakened, but it's probably I'm going to reserve the right to shift and change it 10 million times. But that's my introduction.
4. You get 4.
I get 4 times. I don't get 5 million.
Just kidding.
As my editor, she just limited me. You saw that. Everybody heard that. But I want you to introduce yourself to all of the listeners and the viewers. Tell everybody about you, your mission, all the things.
Wow. Thank you so much for such a beautiful introduction. My name is Elizabeth Lyons. I am a 5-time author, and I'm also a book coach. So I help growth-minded coaches, healers, and leaders write powerful books that stand out. That is my greatest passion. And I'm also the founder of Phyllis Press, which is an independent publishing house. My greatest passion when it comes to book writing is what happens through the book writing. So
yes,
book writing is really just a portal to possibility when it comes to really knowing yourself and really understanding yourself and being able to share that with other people in a way that helps them to expand further. And that's just the way I see it, is that as we expand, our energy can touch others. And then as they expand, their energy can touch others. And that's sort of the ripple effect that we aren't even conscious of when we're just sitting here focusing and sweating and bleeding. They say writers just bleed words, right? We sit down at the computer and we bleed. And many times that's true. And we bleed because it can be challenging, and it can be challenging for different ways, in different ways, for different reasons. So.
Yeah. And therapeutic. Very, very, very healing. Yeah. Yeah. I don't even I am full of all these places I want to go with you during this podcast. I know it's one of many, but I almost feel like I just want to capture as much as possible. And I don't even know where to start. I mean, you know how I operate. I know how you operate, and everybody's going to get a pretty amazing dose of that in this one little episode. But I think I want to start with the importance of, how do you recognize that you have a story worth telling within you?
Oh, you just asked the most loaded. You used a word in there that's so loaded. I don't know if you did it on purpose, but you had me until you said worth telling, right? Because that right there is the biggest block that people have. Is my story worth it? To just cut to the punchline, when people are asking that, they're really not asking, is my story worth it? They're asking, am I worth it? And to be completely clear, very famous, well-known, well-respected people ask themselves the exact same question, because it can feel really vulnerable. It is vulnerable to have a large platform of people who are paying attention to you and then think, what are they going to think if I tell them this?
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
And I remember a great example, Glennon Doyle, when she released Love Warrior, which was her second book, I think, 3 weeks before Love Warrior came out, she and her husband split. And I remember she told the story. I haven't talked to
Yeah.
her recently, but whatever.
Oh yeah.
Had many conversations. But to be clear, so she told the story about how she went to her publisher and said, I just want to let you know, I want to give you a heads up. I'm not hiding this. I'm letting this be known. And they kind of panicked. They were like, can you just hold off for 3 weeks? Can we? And she said, no, because I feel like it'd be disingenuous, but she was legitimately scared. Like, what are people going to think? I've written this whole book about how to warrior your way through a relationship, and I've left mine. But the message still stood. So my point in all of that is that, do I have a story that's worth telling? I don't ever answer that question for people. Another question I don't answer for people, because the answer will always be yes.
Absolutely.
And yet saying yes will not compel them to write the book.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so freaking true.
Right?
Yeah.
So another question I get is this a good story? Like, is my story, which is the same question, it's just phrased differently. I won't answer that either. And I won't answer it out of love, because my co-signing whether or not your book is a good story or is worth telling will mean nothing in the end. Like, you have to get to a space
100%. Yeah. I mean, that is, in my terms, my language on this end of things, that is how you disempower someone completely, by taking on the answer to that and saying, absolutely, you've got a worthwhile story here. Absolutely. You should be telling the story. It's good. You know what I mean? And I think it's one of the most amazing, because it's exactly the question. I don't know if you remember, but it's the exact question that I said to you when we started just kind of having our quote discovery of sorts. And are you good for me? Am I good for you? And it followed, actually was followed by my request to have you ghostwrite my story. That's how okay, no, I was about that. So as soon as you said, no, I've taken on all my ghost story, or my ghost writing clients, I'm not ghost writing. And I'm like, okay, well then, do you think that this would be good? And you're like, do you think it would be good?
Like, that's very common as well, is for people to say, I want to write it, but I want to write the book, but I don't want to write the book, right? I want to hire a ghostwriter. And one of the biggest things that turns people off from that is finding out how much a ghostwriter really costs, for one thing, but for a good ghostwriter. But for another thing, it really, you can't hide behind a ghostwriter.
No.
Right. A ghostwriter is still can only work with what you give them. So you have to be willing to unearth. And so, no, I won't tell people, yes, I think your story's worth it. I think you have a good story. But what I will tell people is I believe in your story, and I don't have to know your story to believe in it. I had a girl message me or a woman message me on Facebook several months ago. And she said, help me with my book. That's how the message started. Help me with my book. And I said, well, can you give me a little more information, right? She went on for paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs about all of her credentials. I've done this and I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. And I responded and I said, respectfully, you don't have to prove to me or anyone else, right, that you are, that you're good enough to write a book. Now, what's your book about? And that was like 3 words. So the energy was such a place of, I don't want to focus on what I want, like how I want to help people in the story I want to tell. I want someone to validate that I'm worth it. And so I will always just say, look, I don't even have to know your story to believe in you and your story and your ability for your story to have an impact, or the ability for your story to have an impact. I already know that to be true.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think it is, again, another way that we avoid showing up by having, and I think there's a time and a place, and I'm sure you agree, there is a time and a place to have a ghostwriter, 100%. But
100%.
when you're talking Jackie Hopper, who wants to talk to you about the spiritual realm, that is not appropriate. No one's going to get, as a ghostwriter, what it is unless I'm the one showing up and really expressing it through my own
I've ghostwritten several phenomenal books, if I do say so. I mean, there is absolutely a time and a place for a ghostwriter. I don't do it anymore, but there's absolutely a time and a place. And many best-selling books have been ghostwritten, but there's a misnomer sometimes that ghostwritten means like faked. And it's not. There's nothing shameful about having a ghostwriter at all. Not at all. it is going to be incredibly important that you still be willing to do the introspective work that's necessary for the powerful story to make its way from your life experience onto the page.
Yeah, because that ghostwriter really needs to understand the depth of the feeling. And I find oftentimes it's way more difficult to get someone to get you that way rather than just
Yeah.
show up and speak your speak, you know? And so it's one of the things, you know, like I said, that's what started our connection is, you know, my insecurity, you know, I even shared with you, I'm the queen of Facebook Lives. I'm the queen of showing up, you know, on video. I am not the queen of trying to write a book, you know, hence the reason why we all should really be investing in a book coach.
Mhm.
You know, one of the best things about you, the most amazing things, and it's so odd kind of feeling like I'm on the other side of this because you are often the interviewer when it comes to the things that we exchange in because
Yeah.
you've got such a great eye for the missing detail to be able to bring it to fruition to add so much more depth and body to what it is we're working on. You know, it is invaluable. And I think that it is something unique about you that you don't, not every book coach is going to do this. Not every book coach has this quality. And I feel, you know, the second book I said to you, it might be different the way we work together, but we're working together. I'll hire you on for every freaking book just to see it through. You know, it's like honoring the energetic integrity of this
Yes.
because I need to make sure
Yes.
that this happens. You know, where do you find most people, aside from what we've kind of covered, where do you find most people struggle with getting their story out?
Well, you just said something really important, which is that the real story lies between the words that are
Mhm,
actually spoken.
mhm.
So one of the things I love about book coaching is hearing what people are saying and hearing what people aren't saying, which is
Yes.
why when I coach, we do it like this via Zoom, because I can
Yes.
see their
Yes.
body language and
Mhm.
I can read. I hope. I mean, and of course I don't always get it right, but where there's a hesitation and where there's more, and people are often mired in concerns over like, well, do I share this one story, or what if I talk about this person, or I don't know if like, especially entrepreneurs or, leaders, they're like, they feel like I don't want to share this side. Like nobody knows that this had happened. I'm just, when they look at me, they see a successful, strong, powerful, confident woman or man.
Mhm.
And what will happen if I show
Yeah.
them this? Right.
Yeah. It's
And
imposter syndrome too.
it is 100%. And what's so
Huge.
interesting about it is that everything's just a mirror, right? So
Mhm.
I often have to say to these individuals, no, wait a minute. You're trying to encourage your readers, clients, whatever, to be their whole selves. You're trying to encourage them that in allowing themselves to be seen and allowing themselves to do the scary things, that's
Mhm.
how they're going to grow. But do you
Yeah.
see how you're not doing that?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
they're 9 times out of 10, if not 10, they're like, oh, shoot.
Yeah. It checks you. It checks you right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's also, you know, it is, you know, in certain circumstances, I know for me, it's always been a writable moment, you know, like a moment to this needs to go in the book. This struggle that you were having, this
Yeah.
needs to go in the book. People need to see that you're here, you know, and working through it in a real person, not just like all the glitz and the glam. Like there's
Yeah.
depth to the
Yeah.
struggle to get to where you want to be. Um, Talk to me about, I don't want you, I know there's like confidentiality clause and top secret NDAs you sign and all the things, but
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
um talk to me about some of the most profound pieces that you've been able to see come through you with your clients.
Meaning product, like the book that's come through, or
Um, no, because I think you would say to me, well, every product that comes from me is
yeah,
amazing and it's
true.
incredible, you
That's
know,
fair.
but I mean, like some
Yeah.
of the ones that, you know, you knew that they were working really hard on this, you knew that they were struggling on their end of putting the piece out. Like, talk to me about some of the more impactful client situations where this went out and total, you know, unfolding, total amazing, awesome, never saw it coming kind of moment.
Untangling. Yeah. One thing that really surprises me is that, so how do I, everybody ends up crying.
Mhm.
And sometimes except me, because I'm kind of I've often joked, I'm kind of like the cold fish. And I'll say like, well, somebody has to stay like in, if we all lose it, what happens, right? Who's going to bring us back in?
Exactly.
And I'm always
Right.
like, I'm not crying here, but I'm crying here,
Mhm,
I
mhm.
think that honestly, I can't think of a project that I have worked on where there has not been a moment where I have felt comfortable saying, wait a minute, like, and very lovingly. And I am, one thing that I tell my clients is that I don't have to operate via HIPAA, but I do.
Right. Yeah.
So I am careful about, because, if someone tells me something that doesn't end up in the book, it will die with me.
Mm, mm.
What I strive for is a rapport where they trust me enough to
Mhm.
say, okay, I'm going to tell you about this. I don't know if it should go in the book, but I want your feedback on it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for the record, I don't tell people whether or not things should, hate that word, go
Right.
in the book.
Right.
It's all about intention. So,
Ah.
right, when people pull something from their past, their recent past, their distant past, whatever it was, and it's like, I feel like maybe this should go in the book, it always comes down to why do you,
Mm.
where's the struggle? Let's
Yeah.
talk through the struggle. Like,
Yeah.
why are you shitting on yourself right now, essentially?
Yes,
And
exactly. Exactly.
that's where I see the biggest breakthroughs with
Yeah.
people, because they
Yeah.
recognize in that moment that they're, in some cases, their reason to want to put something in the book is like personal, it's almost like retribution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
revenge, because
No, no.
I've been contacted by people who want to write revenge books and we never get started. Like, I'm not here for that. Right. But, but this is softer and deeper. It's
It
like,
much is.
yeah, it's like, they're still craving
Mhm.
that,
Nurturing.
yes, that
Yep.
nurturing of their experience, and that
Yep.
like almost, uh, it's not that they're looking for other people to come to their defense,
Mm-mm.
but
Mm-mm.
they want people, it's a value thing. They
It's a
have a
support
sense that
thing.
like, they have a
Yeah.
sense that like, when other people more value what I've been through, I'll
Right.
more value what I've been through, but that's not how it works.
It's not. It's
Yeah.
not. However, we're human and we've been
All
conditioned to
day,
operate like that.
all day,
And
all day.
it is in experiences like our coaching containers where we hold space for people to see their amazing, awesome, wonderfulness, their
Yes.
abilities on my end, the stories on your end. And I knew the answer to that question as they made me pose it to you. There isn't an after the fact, awesome bout of fireworks that happens that you're like, that's why we did this. It is the journey.
It really, I just got goosebumps. It really is. It's
Mhm.
the
Yep.
unfolding.
Yeah.
And, I was just doing a session this morning about the hook of a book,
Mhm.
which I love to
Yeah.
say rhymes, and that's really fun. And
That's good.
without going into like spectacular detail on that, a lot of people will say, once they recognize what the hook is and why it's important, they use that as a procrastination tool. And it's like, well, why haven't you started writing yet? Because I haven't figured out the hook. The hook often evolves significantly through
Yep.
the writing of the book, because we think the book is about one thing.
Yep.
And as we're journeying through it, we're like, oh
I
God.
am a perfect symbol for that. We created the pause. The whole meat of
Yep.
becoming
Yep.
is the pause. But
Yes.
that was not something I went into writing. I was
Yep.
talking about a story, and that right there that's gold. But the other thing is, and we want to give people credit for this too. When you're telling your story and you're trying to recount this trauma that you've been through, or these amazing abilities that you possess, or this grand story that you can put on paper to affect change and and a ripple effect in people's lives,
Mhm.
we hold that within us. And there's such a powerful awareness and recognizing when we speak it out loud and we're watching someone become affected in that moment by it. You know, we
Mhm.
don't realize, by human nature, we don't give ourselves enough credit for the half the stuff we do. We
Right.
think it's like this grand, we take for granted the fact that we're even human. We don't even realize the odds of us actually being human and having a chance at this
Yeah.
earth thing.
Yes. And what's
No,
interesting, what?
no, go. Your turn.
Oh, well, what's interesting is that lots of times, a lot of the clients I've worked with have gone through some truly unimaginable things to me because I have not experienced those things. And so I'm listening to them and I'm processing and I'm listening and I'm also just like, oh my God, like, how are you still standing type of a thing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to them, what's interesting is they're like, what's the big deal? Because this is
Yes.
their story. This is their normal,
Yes.
right? And
Yes.
it's so what just gets me so revved up is when I recognize that they don't recognize. My clients are some of the most humble people on that I've ever met.
Mm.
So it's rare for me to have someone show up in my space anymore and say, "Oh my God, I've got the best story ever. I mean, it's going to change millions and millions of lives. It's unbelievable because that's a different energy."
Yeah.
And it's equally, I don't want to say it's challenging to work with, but how do I say that? It's both energies, humility and we'll just say non-humility, are powerful. They're
Well,
powerful.
let's call it like it is. If I were to show up and say,
Okay.
if I showed up and said, I've got this amazing thing, it's going to knock people on their asses. It's going to be the most powerful thing next to so-and-so's autobiography. There would be no need for the container.
100%. And the expectations are already off. There's no need for the container because
There's no
again,
need for the
they're
container.
not open. They're
Oh,
open in a different way. They're open to something
true.
different. So that's a
True.
brilliant point that you just made.
Mhm.
When
Mhm.
you're existing in an energy of humility, which I have looked at differently since we're not going to talk about it so people can read all about it, but since
Thank you.
starting to peruse your content on book number
Thank
2,
you.
when
I
you're in
appreciate
an
it.
energy, there are different ways that people think about energy of humility. From my perspective, right? When I
Mhm.
work with, when I speak about clients who are humble and people who are humble, what I'm speaking to is that they're just like, why is anyone going to be impressed by this?
Mhm.
And the thing of it is that people don't recognize is no one, when you're writing about having gone through something that's really challenging, most people who read your book and enjoy and love and learn from your book haven't gone through that thing, but they felt
Mhm.
what you felt.
Mhm.
And that's the key.
Mhm.
So it's getting people to a place where they recognize the unique insights and wisdom and truly gifts for themselves and for others that come from acknowledging where they've been and
Mhm.
what they've seen and experienced and lived through.
Absolutely. Because no one's going to live through the same experience the same way.
Exactly.
You very much so. I mean, here's a book, when people come and they say, well, Jackie Hopper wrote a book about being psychic and, being a healer. How she took my book. Who was it we were talking to? Or no, I know it was you I was talking to, but there was a author
Mhm.
who put a book out the same time. I think it was Gabby Bernstein, not for nothing. I
I
think it
think it
was
was
Gabby
too, to be honest.
I think she put out a book right around the time that we were going to publish.
Mhm.
And I was like, "Oh my gosh, she stole my whole
Which
my
is
bubble of
so funny,
energy."
right? Because right, like
You
right.
know? And I was like, how, what the heck? And one of your other beautiful qualities is to be able to reel people in. Okay, it's all right. Come back here. Maybe she did. We put our pity party on. You entertained it for a minute, but then you were like, let's come back to this because your story is unique to you and no one else has your story.
Well, and it's
And
like,
no one
what's
else.
the fear behind that? What's the thought behind that? The thought is,
Yeah.
more often than not, the thought is, oh my God, if someone as big as Gabby Burns, there's two thoughts. One, two main. If someone as big as Gabby Bernstein just released a book on the same topic, mine's never going to sell. That's the first thought. The second thought is, what if Gabby Bernstein reads my book and is like, oh my God, Jacqueline Hopper stole my idea? That's not going to happen either.
Yeah, she beat me to the publishing line, like the publishing line. You know what I mean? Like, who can get the content out first? She beat me. Yeah, 100%. And it was the super attractor. No, it wasn't the super attractor. Yes,
it was something. Wait, hang on. Your mic is like super. Whenever you talk, it's like super staticky.
Is it?
Yeah, it just started like a minute ago.
Is that better?
Talk again.
Is that better?
Mm-mm. It just came out of nowhere.
Okay, I'm going to switch to my ears. They'll edit this out. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay, well, we'll let the Yeti go.
Okay.
I think the Yeti go. Yeah. So I think Gabby came out with the super attractor.
I think that's correct.
And that's the book that she went into, like how to connect with your guides and how to connect with your psychic abilities. And as I read that while I'm writing mine, which, you know, it should be a fine print clause. I rule with working with Elizabeth, don't read anybody else's book until yours is done. You really need to add that to your contract because
add that to my agreement. Yes. Yes. Because that's it's so easy. I mean, these are all things that, and what I want to be clear about is that everyone falls into this. It's not just people who've never written a book before. I've written 5 books. I still fall into it. The book I'm working on right now is fiction, and I'm reading a lot of fiction. And believe me, I have many moments where I'm like, oh my God, I don't think I can write anything half as good as this. You know, that's being human.
Yes.
It's just a matter of how long do we allow ourselves to stay there? And do we have someone to help us uncover, if we can't do it for ourselves, what's going on there?
100%. You know, the thing that I'm going to explain it the best way that I can see it in the energy, and you can help me out as you always do after the fact. You get me out of a lot of messes I get myself into, and then you're like, what you mean it?
And vice versa.
I wish I'm going to take you to every interview, you know, to make sure, you know, I need my coach to edit me out after the fact. But when we're writing a book and in any piece, but primarily the ones that are deep to us, deep to our trauma, deep to our experiences, outing us as psychics and everything else that we out ourselves as, it can be a very, I don't want to say dark in the sense of negative, but it can be a very isolating experience because no one knows what you're about to write about, only you do. And there's no one there to help in the sense of, do you remember that time? Put that there. Do you remember this time? Put that there. You know, and one of the you know, priceless aspects of working with you is this ability to have a sounding board and someone who is very coming into herself, intuitive in her own right, to be able to know when there's something more to this that's not being shared, or you know, examples of this that have to be shared to drive the point home. Right. You know?
Right.
And I think that anybody writing a book, unless they're in that energy of, I've got this is freaking fantastic, I'm going to be a millionaire, even though we know how that is, we won't go there. You're not a millionaire off your book. You're a millionaire off of all the extras that come from it. But if you're not 100% aligned and confident in your ability to create something, because that's you on your own, you absolutely need to do the investing in having a container that not only supports prevention of procrastination, but a container that will act as a sounding board when you can't find your words, or when you found your words, but you need more of them. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
I do know what you're trying to say. You know, it might seem as though as a book coach, I would be someone who would say, everybody needs a book coach. I don't believe that. I don't. I think there are a lot of people who have been writing for a long time who,
Let me stop you. Let me stop you. I'm going to call bullshit on that from my perspective. I
oh,
think anybody writing a book should have a book coach.
okay.
Unless you've done it a million bajillion
Wait, let me
times.
be super clear. Let me be super clear. Everybody who's writing a book needs an editor.
Okay, I'm going to stay over here and still
Okay.
stay firm on mine. I think
That's okay.
they have to have a book coach. But here's what I want to say to you.
Okay.
Not every book coach is Elizabeth Lyons.
And not every author, is it right? Like,
Do you know? But like, I mean, someone having that soundboard, that overseer of sorts, that time manager of sorts, that person that's in your ear going, haven't seen your manuscript updated since last week. What's up?
yeah,
How you doing? What's
going
going on?
Yeah.
That is
It is
everything.
a different, I do this in a different space. So for me, there are all kinds of programs out there, and I think that's wonderful because there are all kinds of people out there. It's not just about here's the tactical. When people come to work with me, they've tried the tactical. They've bought courses, they've read books on how to write books, they've watched YouTube videos, they've Googled until they can't Google anymore. And they've got all the information on how to do it, but they're still not getting it done. So
100%.
yes, right. Like I have the tactical, and this is the tactical that works for me. These are the steps that work for me to get it done. But in addition to that, I care about the human who's doing the writing.
Yeah.
So book writing is the portal through which, I love the connection and the community and the expansion that happens to a person as they are writing, particularly transformative nonfiction and inspirational memoir. Fiction, different beast, right?
Yes.
But when you're writing transformative nonfiction or inspirational memoir, man, the expansion that's possible is just remarkable because we don't see, and you speak to this all the time. There's a veil. I mean, there are aspects, there's shadows, things. I can't speak to this nearly as well as you can, but we don't want to see them. So we are in our ego when we are writing a book.
Absolutely.
End of story.
Absolutely. 100%.
I require that my clients be willing to step back from their ego. Because that's how we write really powerful books.
Absolutely. And that right there, again, like I knew you would, you edited me perfectly. That's exactly what it is. That's the point I want to make, is that when you are honoring the integrity of the work that you're going to do, and we've talked about this, my belief is that my book, once it was completed, and even as it was being done, had an energy that came through me. Yes, we had, all the universal support at our disposal to help create the piece, but the piece was a piece of art that was coming to life. And once it was published, it was kind of like the red tape of cutting of sorts, the ceremony of, opening it up and putting it out there. It became a life of its own, an energy of its own. And it is supposed to be set free to do what it's meant to do without stagnation of expectation and opinion, and that.
You are the unique channel through which this particular story can be told in this particular way. And you must remove attachment to how and when. So everyone's focused on bestseller lists. And listen, I'm not here to say any of that's bad. What I am here to say unequivocally is hitting a obscure Amazon bestseller category for 32 minutes on a Wednesday on a 99-cent ebook. That is about you. That is about your ego. It is not lasting anything for you, and it is not lasting anything for anyone else.
Because after that 32-minute mark, you're back to 15,427.
That's the thing. And everyone sees that. And yes, I can get on a soapbox about this, but the reality of it is still so pervasive because people are like, well, this is what I want to do. I've seen other people do it. And there's an expectation of what that means. And so I do spend a decent amount of time going, okay, here's the reality of this. And it's not me trying to be a negative Nancy or a naysayer or anything, because I've seen books sell hundreds of thousands of copies without ever hitting a bestseller list. And our good mutual friend, Drew Lynn Salata,
Yeah.
Perfect example.
A perfect example. A perfect example.
Perfect example.
100%. 100%. And, I think that the way that, and I don't even, you could tell me this, I can't, but almost like there's this glitz and glam of being an author that for some odd reason or at some crazy point was taken totally out of context. Like you don't get rich as an author off your book. I mean, you could, but that looks completely different than what most people think it looks like.
All day.
All day.
But to be clear, fair, and everything else, like there's a misconception and a glitz and a glamour about so many things. Being an author,
True.
being a celebrity,
True.
being an influencer,
and
the
true.
reality behind all of that is so much different from what people think. I mean, I know I've told you this story, but I interviewed Justin Guarini for my previous podcast when I was doing Authors, Creators, and Visionaries. And he's told the story many different places, but what really goes on in that world? I mean, he came in second to Kelly Clarkson in the first season of American Idol for people who are much young. Lots of times I mention him and I talk about him to younger people and they're like, who? And I'm like, please don't make me feel archaic. Like, I know I'm decrepit, but come on. But anyway, he tells the story of like what really goes on, with that $1 million contract. And it's the same across so many industries. And so, I'm not trying to be negative about it. I'm trying to say this is what it is. So go into it with the correct expectations.
Absolutely.
And no, you're probably not going to become rich off the sale of your book. However, if you will take a minute and write a truly powerful, deeply moving book, which I know you can do.
True.
You will not even be prepared for the opportunities that will present themselves. And those opportunities are what can make you not only money, because it's not just about money, it's about living the fullness of
the experience and of the experience. People who are writing books, and we'll take it down that one lane of, inspirational and, spiritual and expansive. You're in it for the service of it. You're not in it for the money of it. Otherwise, that right there means we have to stop and recalibrate. What is the why behind why you're putting this piece out? And anybody telling their story, why is it, when someone says to you, Elizabeth, is this worth putting a book? I would turn it around and say, you tell me why it's worth. What makes you feel like you want to put it in a book rather than a Facebook post, or a blog or on a, whatever. People have the answer to that for sure, and for me,
sometimes they're afraid of they're embarrassed by the answer, to be honest.
Yes. And going back to the entire time we worked together, I was totally aligned with doing what I was doing. I think, and I don't know if I ever shared this with you, I would tell you, we launched at 11/11 of 2020, right? 2020. Yep. I would say 11/1 is when I started panicking.
Yeah.
My parents are going to want to support me, which means they're going to buy the book, which means they'll end up reading the book, which means they'll see this or this or this or this or this, and OMFG.
Yep.
I never really got permission from my brother to talk about his near-death experience, which I've later learned is actually he had an actual near-death experience. He spoke to us about this vision he had about my grandfather coming to him and telling him, there's no way you're going to die here. There's no way you're going to die here. That's going to come in the Awakened book, because I don't even, of this beautiful piece of me telling you how amazing I am. People write all the time and they're like, how's your brother doing? Like, what the heck? You missed the point.
Wait a minute. That right there is huge to point out. We do not know which piece. We think our book is going to inspire or move people in a certain way, and we get really attached to that. We have no idea.
It's so true. A lot of people, how's he doing? And I always feel like I have to include him in every book thereafter, so everybody knows, like he's fine. He's
in the introduction, for those of you who have been worrying about my brother, let me be clear before I launch into the rest of the screen.
Exactly. He's a pain in my ass still. He's still there, but so much, makes an impact on people. And I think the thing that has been so amazing for the experience is seeing which parts make the impact, and really like which parts people resonate with or write and say, holy cow, like that is exactly what my spiritual journeys look like too, you know. It is so confirming, you know. So when we make our process deliberate around the service of what it's meant to do, like you said, the places it's going to take you and the things you're going to be able to do because of it, you know, it's limitless. It is so limitless.
It absolutely is. And, you know, a huge part of it is you can write, there are incredibly powerful books, beautiful books, gathering dust, because the author is not yet in a place, still, it can be 10 years, 15 years later, comfortably owning that it's out there. Like, and when you said it's like a child, I often, an analogy I use with people who are parents is when your child starts thinking about like walking and they stand up and then they kind of fall down, you don't say, okay, we're done. Like, just, can you just stay seated there? I'm going to put a bubble around you. You're never going to go to school because I don't want anyone to say anything unkind to you. You're never going to leave the house because God forbid you trip and you skin your elbow and that hurts and you cry and we can't find the right, like Bob the Builder Band-Aid. And then that's like, that's that. We don't do that as parents. We say, you got this. Let's try again. Let's try again. Let's try again. And it's the old adage that a child doesn't, when they're learning how to walk, doesn't fall and think, well, that's not for me.
Yeah, exactly.
When you're looking at your book, it's so helpful to look at your book in the same light. We worry about bad reviews. We worry that people won't like it. But what we're really what we're really worried about is that people won't like us.
It is what we're reviewing. We're reviewing ourselves.
Well, that's true. That's true.
You know, we are. We're reviewing ourselves in advance of what is what could take place, or you know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
But why is that the curiosity? Why not flip that to I'm curious about what amazing thing could happen. I'm curious about what email I could get from someone who's like, thank you so much for speaking what I couldn't put words to.
It's because I have the answer. I know you're not asking, but I have the answer. It is social conditioning. As a society, we're conditioned to be careful. Well, in advance, you have to be careful. I mean, our parents, all loving as they are, be careful. Be careful. You know, Dad, you know, I said to my dad, I'm going to New York City. Head on a swivel. Make sure you have your head on a swivel. Going to Greece. Are you sure? Head on a swivel. You know what I mean? Like, that's my dad's fatherly advice. Head on a swivel. Like, what? What does that mean?
I don't know. I don't know what a lot of things mean. I actually have a book I'm looking sort of in its direction called Why Do We Say It? That's what the book is called.
Right.
Knees. Do bees have knees? Like, I'm so confused.
Exactly. So because we've been conditioned to be careful, that extends to this. This is a big project. People wouldn't be criticizing themselves or self-analyzing to the depths at which they did if this wasn't a big deal.
Correct.
Right? So here comes our ego to protect us. That's its job. So out of shame or out of embarrassment or out of fear or out of lack or unworthiness, we're given these excuses as to why we should wait, why it's not the right time, why, you know, all of the things. I mean, who knew 11/11/2020 would be when we would do the book? I mean, that's what we channeled on a million bajillion times and said it's coming out 11/11/2020. You were like, okay, you know, in the midst of a pandemic. And we still
pandemic, right?
In my opinion, best-selling author. We had number 5.
And that's the key. That's the key. Really, like, how do you define it? How do you define success as anything, but in this case, as an author? How do you define best-selling? How, you know, it's just, it's like, can you be willing, and this is the question I ask anyone who's listening, can you be willing to separate your ego from the books, from the spirit of the book? And nurture the spirit of the book and say, like, say to both yourself and the book, like, I'm here, I've got you. If someone criticizes you, if someone throws you in the trash, I'm here.
If someone never reads you, but just picks you up and says, I'm going to pay for this to support you, but they never read your book. My brother. I think you read chapter 7, which was his chapter. But no, I'm kidding. But you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And I would even say, to your point, from a different perspective, listen to your ego tell you all the things that will go wrong. Listen to it. And as soon as it's done, decide if that's the thing, but I'm letting that go. and I'm more excited about what could become of this piece. And, you know, mine was always from the beginning of my business, I want to affect the life of one person. So if
Yeah.
one person read that book and it turned all kinds of lights on and rang all kinds of bells and whistles, that was made, you
But you
know.
realize that's not even affecting one person, because you're affecting, like, that's one person for you, but then imagine how many people they're going to affect with the
Yeah.
knowledge, the new knowledge and insights that they have, and on and on and on. And
Yeah.
that's where our ego gets hung up in, well, I only sold 5 books.
But did you?
But did you, right? But
Yeah.
did you only impact 5 people? I mean, do you even know what went on? And the answer is typically no, I have no idea what went on.
100%.
We're looking at
And
it.
you don't, just like all the millions of people that see your Facebook post that don't like or don't comment, but you made a
Yeah.
change.
Yeah.
We have to be willing to let it be what it's meant to be and know there's a divine plan. You would not have your story if it wasn't meant to be shared.
That's exactly right. It was not meant
Plain
to
and
die
simple.
with you.
Never. Was it Wayne Dyer? Don't let the music die within you, or something like that?
Probably.
I think it was Wayne Dyer. Don't let the
Wise
music
and
die
brilliant.
inside you. Yeah.
Mhm.
Amazing dude.
There's
Amazing
another
dude.
famous one. There's nothing worse than a story dying with a
Left on.
story inside you, or a story that'll never be told, or something,
Yeah.
something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing and badly at that, but yeah.
It's so true. It's so true. Okay. My listeners and my viewers can totally click the show notes and they'll find absolutely everything there is to know about you. If you are out there contemplating a story, contemplating a book, contemplating any piece of writing, definitely reach out to Elizabeth, share it with her, talk to her about it, allow her to nurture your process with you, because it's different for everyone. And it's the thing I love most about Elizabeth is it's not one size fits all. It's who are you? What are you wanting to do? What is the change you're wanting to make? And allow her to support you through your process. I guarantee you much more success working with her than going it alone. One, because it's going to take you far longer. You will stop and you will have that writer's block, which is only just a limited belief that will come up often for us. And you will move through it much more gracefully, and it will be much less painless, or much less painful by doing it that way. So make sure that you are reaching out. Let her know you saw this podcast. DM her, get in her Facebook, get all the things. You're definitely going to want to check that out. Do you have anything right now that you suggest people take away from, like, one thing you want people to take away from this?
I mean, it's the phrase I say all the time, just write the damn book already. What are you waiting for? There are very few answers that I hear that make sense, that are co-sign, right?
Yes. Okay. And one final question that I ask every guest that comes up on, I'm going to call this a stage, because that's what we're manifesting as a stage. So everyone that comes up on the stage and is in the hot seat, trying to figure out how to phrase this. A soul's sovereignty, your soul's sovereignty. Okay, thank you. Your soul's sovereignty and your story. Connect them for me.
They're one and the same.
Okay, tell me why.
Because your story is who you are.
There's power in your story.
I mean, I have goosebumps. It's every inch of it it has you in the now.
100. Oh, I love that. I love that. Yes, absolutely. So good. Yeah. Listen, I'm probably going to be in your email and your DM. Come on and do a podcast like every week. You'll have
I would love to
relax. I was there last week. They're going to get sick of us until we are doing things in person, though. which will be soon. I look forward to our next connection through this.
Thank you
This
so much for
medium.
having me. I love talking to you about anything under the sun.
Yeah,
This for sure. Most
for sure.
definitely. Thank you.
Awesome. That concludes another awesome episode of The Sovereign Soul with Jacqueline Hopper. I will see you next time.